Hello and a warm welcome to everyone. We would like to wish everyone a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Samantha and I'm from Safeopedia. And here at Safeopedia, it is our mission to support the EHS professionals, operational folks, and any safety-minded individuals with free safety information, tools, and education. Just a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and we will send a link to the recording to everyone in a few days. This webinar is for you, the audience, so let's keep it interactive. Make sure you get your questions or your comments into the GoToWebinar console and we will get to them at the end of today's presentation. I will also be introducing today's presenter today, Corey Pitzer. Today, we are proud to present When the New View Safety Approach Becomes Dangerous. The Safeopedia webinar has been brought to you today by SafeMap. It is now my pleasure to reintroduce Corey Pitzer. Corey is the CEO and founder of SafeMap International, a company specializing in the psychology of risk. He consults internationally to many corporations in mining, utilities, military defense, and construction. All with occupations in which people can be seriously injured or killed in their work. Corey was an infantry platoon commander, an underground miner, and he has done every dirty job to earn money for his studies. Corey enjoys skydiving, motorcycling, and race car driving. As a result, he knows a little more about risk than he does safety. With that, I'm very proud to have you all sit back and relax and enjoy this presentation. With that, Corey, let's jump into it.
Thank you, Samantha. I'm Corey Pitzer here. My topic, when the new view safety approach becomes dangerous, is a little bit controversial. Judging by the number of emails and text messages and WhatsApps that I received, expressing concern from my colleagues about why am I going to discuss new view safety approach becoming dangerous, given that I am very much vested into the whole concept of new view of safety. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But I want to do this in order to challenge ourselves, to challenge myself, to challenge my colleagues, and to challenge everybody that is embarked on the road of the new view of safety, whether it's HOP, safety 2, safety differently. I use all these terms interchangeably. It's virtually the same thing, slight differences here and there. But I want to quote Timothy Clark, who said that in the optimization of an organization's culture, we have to be willing and able to publicly challenge what you have helped create. And I've certainly been, my whole life, I've been vested in the new view of safety. And I'll tell you a little bit when it started in my career. But I have introduced the new view of safety and still do that to many, many clients around the world. Hundreds of companies have taken this on through SafeMap, and thousands of people have been affected. So what I'm saying today is not a criticism, it is challenging myself, and hope you can share in that. I'm going to start my presentation by talking about a little island in a little speck in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And this little island is no bigger than 15 miles wide, long, 8 miles wide, and it is famous for its statues, Easter Island. Now, why is this important? Well, they have, since the year 800, developed a very sophisticated society. Their religion, their beliefs, all had them carving these massive statues, 30 feet high, 80 tons in weight. And they've been transporting them on trees to the end and edges of that island. They did that in the belief that they're doing the right thing. And at some point, they were transporting these statues, rolling them on trees, and at some point, they cut down the last tree. They destroyed the environment on this little island, and the society collapsed. When the Dutch explorer in 1722 got there the first time and discovered the island, the society had collapsed into total decay. cannibalism, and it was almost at the edge of starvation. Did no one think at some point we're cutting down the last tree? This is what we did in the company where I started my work in South Africa, the Kinross gold mine. I worked for a company called Gencor, and this was one of their mines. And safety was a religion. It was introducing the Frank Bird loss control system, and this particular mine, Kinross gold mine, received a 5-star award. This happened around 1980, in the early 80s, and today this 5-star system is known as the DNV system. But on this day, the 16th of September 1986, this high-performing 5-star organization had a disaster. 177 people killed underground. And it had a dramatic impact on this organization. Now, what happened in Gencor at the time was I was tasked with facilitation of what was known as the Gencor Safety Review. And for 2 years, I visited 61 sites around the country. And we spent a week with a small team of about 12 people, 6 home team people, 6 visitors from other mines. And we reviewed catastrophic risks and fatal risks. It was a program of elimination of fatalities. It was extensive, and it literally changed this organization, the whole models thinking around. While this was happening, I was developing the follow-up to this, the Gencor Safety Performance Review, which started in 1988. And this was very much the very first HOP process that I know of that we deployed there. This is how it worked. My colleague Eric Ratchikopa would go to the mine site beforehand, 3 weeks before, complete culture surveys. I developed my first culture model there, completed these surveys, and then gathered learning teams. He developed 6 learning teams on site over those 3 weeks, 3 worker learning teams, 3 supervisor teams, and they were then preparing for when the big thing happens. In 3 weeks' time, the safety performance review will happen. And for the first 2 days, we brought in people from the outside again. We did another 2 days of catastrophic and fatal risk review, looking at what they have achieved since the first one. And then on day 3, they all left and the management team gathered and day 1 started. On day 3, day 1 of the performance side of it. On the first day, the learning teams came in. Small teams of employees, worker level, and they had discussions, presentations to management about training, procedures, risk incentives in their workplaces, and decisions were made. Then the supervisor learning teams came in. They made their presentations of what they had identified. We made a presentation to the management team around cross-cultural management of people, 11 different languages in South Africa at the time. It was very much a human performance review. The next day, the 4th day, we did the organizational performance review. This was about leadership. We did 360s on them, and we introduced to them a new direction in safety. This is at the time when Deming's book has already been published, Charles Perrow's Normal Accident. Much of the work of Dan Peterson had become known and available, and very much safety 2 stuff that we introduced the management team there, and we let them think deeply about man-made disasters. What is it that the organization is doing or not doing that create the precursors and create the conditions for these disasters to happen? This was advanced stuff at the time. Now, and on the 5th day, the management team went into a process of strategic planning. Why am I telling you this? I'm not telling you this to boast. I'm telling you this to show that I've been deeply vested in the human and organizational performance concept, the safety differently concept, even before the books about it have been published in the late 1990s and 2000. And this was become my life work. There was another company, Anglo-American at the time, that owned a lot of gold mines. They wanted to employ me to deploy the same process in the organization. I decided to resign from Gencor and become a consultant, And a few years later, little did I know that a tragic event is going to bring me back. I was living in Australia at the time, bring me back into the fold and consulting to this organization. This is what happened on this site. This is a mine shaft. This Vaal Reefs was a huge gold mining company, 50,000 people working across 16 huge shafts and plants. Also, very much on this 5-star rating process. And this particular shaft, on this day, employees gathered to go on the ground. It was a night shift to go on the ground. And this is how people go on the ground. And you may have seen this little video before. People gather in these mine skips, 50 people at a time, one deck, 50 people on another deck, and here they go.
Traveling at 6 meters per second. You have 3 shafts. We're going down the first shaft, then we're going to go a long way, then down the second, and then down the third. The experience, your ears blocking now.
And that means when he says we go down, we walk a little bit to another shaft, we go down another level, we're actually going down 3,000 feet at a time, walk to another shaft, go another 3,000 feet down, walk to another shaft, get into the cages, go down another 3,000 feet, and walk miles sometimes to the workplaces. What they do in that environment is absolutely, from an engineering perspective, mind-boggling. You cannot imagine what they accomplish. Now, this particular shaft had over 3,000 people and about 600 people on the night shift, and it was shift change. The night shift is going down, the day shift is coming out. This is about an hour-and-a-half operation, probably the most dangerous part of the day. So the employees would gather in turns in the skips. They would get out, start walking down to their workplace. The day shift people that was waiting come in. They get into the skips and they go out. And up and down this go, 3,000 people get shifted in a day like this. And this is where it typically looks down the shaft where people get out. Now on this day, a supervisor walked out of the cage and started proceeding to his workplace when he noticed something wrong. There was a loco parked in an illegal position. You'll see what I mean. He called back to the workers there and said, are there any drivers there? One guy says, yes, I'm a driver. He pulled him up and says, move this loco out of this area. Now, a couple of things went wrong. The driver didn't do a pre-start inspection. People don't quite do that. He didn't do a walk around. He jumped on the loco. He puts it into a direction, forward or reverse, and he hits a dead man switch at the same time. When he did this, the loco jumped in the wrong direction. It jumped towards the shaft. It engaged with a man carriage, and it started running down towards that shaft gates that you just saw there, and it smashed through the gates. Moments after the double-decker cage had just gone past that level, and it all plunged down to shaft bottom, crushing those double-decker cages, 104 people in it, to 18 inches of rubble, steel, mangled steel, and human bodies. Now, I was engaged by the CEO at the time to assist him in this process. And when we were going through various discussions, I said to him one day, Mike, how is it possible that a loco fell down the shaft? Because I knew that this is almost impossible. This is the biggest single risk on a mine. They know all about it. And he said, Corey, I agree. I couldn't believe it. We had a shaft incident 2 years before, and it destroyed the shaft, millions of dollars of damage. And we know this is the single biggest risk. We had everything done around to prevent that from happening. He said, we made it humanly impossible to ever happen again, yet it did. Here's what they've done. Well, the first thing is, in that zone area, about 33 yards out, they declared that a safe zone. No locos are allowed to be parked there without anybody operating it. Can't be standing alone. This is what the supervisor saw as wrong, and that's what he wanted to correct. That's when it started to go wrong. But there were many protections that would have stopped that loco to hit the shaft gates. A runaway loco simply can't run away. Now, here's some of the protections. One is they have what they call farm gates. This would stop the loco, no problems, always supposed to be closed 24/7 and locked on this day, standing wide open. Back there before the shaft gates, you see two protruding steel bars. They call them mall stoppers. They basically steel bars, RSJ steel bars, plunged into concrete holes. They can be removed. They need to pull the locos through. They have to be padlocked. On this day, a ship was from another level, was having a safety inspection, an audit, and he didn't have his in place, so he came down and he borrowed theirs and he removed them. That didn't stop the loco. There were supposed to be aeroplane sprags. These aeroplane sprags are wooden crosses bolted together, placed on the tracks, would derail a runaway loco. On this day, they were supposed to be at certain positions in front of this, in this area, on this day, lying off the side. There was the second last was a tank trap. A tank trap is a ditch cut through the rails, about that deep, and the rails are normally kept in the cages so that it would entrap the wheels. So there's supposed to be no rails in. On this day, they left the rails in and it ran through. And then the last defense was the shaft gates. The shaft gates are designed to withstand the impact of more than a loco running away. And on this day, it broke off like pieces of wood. And when they retrieved them from underground, they found that the reason for that was their hinges were rusted through very wet areas, these shafts, and it just collapsed. But we also noted fresh yellow paint. They were painting these rust over for the 5-star rating systems and audits. On this day, 11 systems failed. 11 systems that should have and could have and would have prevented this all failed. And it just ran away and all not working. We did a simulation afterwards that if the cages were still coming down and this all failed, the shaft would have been damaged, nobody killed. The cages were on their way to the next level, and it would stop on the next level and everybody to disembark. In that little distance would have taken 31 seconds. There was a 31-second window in which this all failed. Now, I've done a lot of analysis on this particular event and published some papers about it way back when it happened, and gathered the failures, the deficiencies, if you could call it, in 4 broad categories. And essentially, basically on the control side, these controls were unverified, they were decaying, they were ignored, as you've seen there. This resulted in the behaviors of people being condoned. Risk-taking behaviors were normalized in this environment, as the supervisor had done when he noticed that the driver didn't do the proper pre-start inspections. This created a culture, influenced a culture which I call inconsequential. There was no unconditionality in it. It was conditional. We'll do safety if we get our numbers and get our targets. And in terms of the response to risk, this became chronically eased. This is a response, and I'll talk about homeostasis and diffusion. But there are organizations around the world, many organizations around the world, and I've studied this also, who have shown the same kind of features and characteristics of organizations that fail and collapse. And these organizations are all part of the group of organizations that had catastrophic events despite the fact that they had exemplary safety records. Now, let's turn to when the new view safety approach becomes dangerous. Now, the new view is not a system. It's not a safety program. It is a paradigm. It is a philosophy. It is a theory in many ways. And I want to just start off by referring to Yogi Berra. Those of you who don't know Yogi Berra, Google him. Famous baseball player who had the most funny statements that he always made. And one was, In theory, there is no difference between theory and practice. In practice, there is. Let's look at the theory of the new view of safety that I fully, wholeheartedly support. Maybe just one of them, not quite, we'll talk about that. But I am absolutely behind this. But what happens in practice? Let's look at various principles. And I'm going to look at 11 principles that I've just collected randomly, and I will discuss them almost randomly. The first one is when worker behavior is not a problem. This is a statement in the new view that you will see everywhere. You will see it in every author's book. You will see it in every blog. You will see it every other day posted on LinkedIn. Everybody loves this statement. And it's absolutely the big dividing factor from safety 1 and safety 2. Old safety and new safety. And the typical response is that it's not the problem. Worker behavior is not the problem. It is an expression of the problem. Now, this was even said by Dan Peterson in the 80s when he said, accidents are the normal reaction of people to their work environments. It's the expression of the problem. It's not the cause of it. Now, this has led us to start looking upstream in the organization. Well, if it is an expression of the problem, where is the problem? And that's upstream. Where are the sources of this? And what are we doing? We have identified the new culprits. And who are the new culprits? Who is in charge of the systems? Who are in charge of the practices? Who create the culture in the organization? Who create the production operational processes? The manager. And this is the new blame. This is the new finger pointing. I think, do not appreciate the enormous pressures that the manager themselves are under. They are not independently creating issues in the organization. They enter the organization within a powerful culture. They are untrained in the psychology of safety, which is what safety is so much about. But also, we do not fully appreciate the demand of results that they have. And they're being measured with metrics that are essentially metrics of good luck and bad luck. And yet they get incentivized and they get punished on those metrics. And we'll talk about that as well. But it's very clear to me that they are sinking. In this whole new thinking world of safety, this whole new view, they are sinking in it. And somehow we have to rectify this, correct this, and provide them with a lifeline. And that lifeline is we should give them back their dignity and we should give them back their power. We should empower the managers in the organization to drive safety. Now, I know that this is very much what the new view of safety is also saying. But are we achieving that in practice? Are we providing them with the expertise to really do that? We'll talk about that again. It may not be that easy as just expertise. Number 10, workers are the problem solvers. That follows from they are not the problem, they are the problem solvers. Now, what has this led to? This has led to a whole new panacea, which is also not new. This is also very much part of the Deming, Peterson principles that had been in existence in the 70s and 80s, the engagement of the worker. But now there's a new excitement about it. We are now having Gemba walks that we are giving, Gemba walks, also old concept, but safety walks, visible felt leadership processes where we have to go out and talk to workers. And we have quotas that we give the managers now, and they have to go out and engage. And, you know, this is a diffusion of roles. Because as the suits come out, this is what they've been called on a construction site or in a workplace, the suits come out and they start kicking tires here with us. They're starting to discuss problems with us and issues. Is that what they're supposed to be doing? Well, the management of the organization, they are subjected to the board, the governance, sustainability, environmental reports, the ESG reporting. They are subjected to the KPIs they get from their corporate offices, and they get it. I have yet to meet a management team that is not on board with their obligations. But then they start to engage, and they start to engage with the frontline worker engagement. They're the problem solvers, and also we are going after the worker through the corporate communications departments, through the safety departments, and it is a very, very intensive process. It is a panacea. Now, in that process, what happens? We have the middle management, the frontline supervision on their own. They're almost being bypassed. And the management and all these systems, the onlookers bypass them straight to the worker. They are committed and there. So what does the middle management do? The middle management put their effort into what they are in the end being paid for. They have to provide the direction and systems and processes for production. And it is a split system, and I call this this diffusion of roles. I call this a two-speed management system, and this I've seen everywhere in the organizations. Now, this is leading to this whole issue of the fusion of who's responsible for what. And from a perspective of what should we do about this, I think we should get rid of the onlookers. We should place the safety process back where it is supposed to be, right at that middle management level. That's where it should be driven from, first and foremost in the organization. And are we creating a situation that we are not allowing that to happen? The next one, leaders' response to failure. Now, this is the next typical statement you'll see, that they have to respond to failure in the organization in a constructive, positive way. Leaders must care. You see this also in every other book. The care principle of safety, leadership. The new model is the servant leader. And of course, I am in support of this. But there's something starting to get amiss here. I'm wondering if we are starting to lose inspiration from the front, leadership from the front, where there's boldness to make decisions and not standing back and, well, the workers will solve the problem for us. I want to introduce a friend of mine. Well, it's not a friend. I met him once and I was hugely impressed with him. I was in South Africa at the time, coal mine, where I went to his underground coal mine section, and I was hugely impressed what I saw there and how they talk about their leader. His name was Lionel. How they talk about him. He's a mine captain. And the next day I met with him, and I wanted to see what's this guy's like. And I asked him, how often do you get underground? And he said to me, as little as I possibly can. And I couldn't believe it. And I was a bit shocked. And I said, well, shouldn't you be there more? He said, no, that's not my job. My job is not underground. My job is in my office. If I'm walking around underground too much, I'm in people's pathways, I'm in their way, I'm in their hair, and I shouldn't be there. They know I care about them, and I do care about them. They know what to do. I equip them. My job is to provide them with resources, the systems. My job is to gaze at the wall. And my job is to make sure that I am not generating risk for their circumstances. I must think strategically and tactically. Well, maybe that is the role of the management in the organization. And I say this tongue in the cheek. We are losing that role. If you look at where people are increasingly spending their time, our management, high-level managers, are they really spending enough time in their offices thinking? I know this sounds very controversial. It's almost the opposite of what we tell them to do. You must be out there and show you care. I think we're starting to lose the balance on this. Number 8, declutter the safety system. Also a huge focus in the organizations these days. And I've seen many times where organizations, safety people would say, you know, we used to have 200 pages of safety procedures. Now we have 10. And it's like almost a bragging right that how little procedures we have now. I do appreciate and support that too. I have seen myself reams and reams of paperwork in organizations that contribute zero, nothing to the safe performance of that organization. And I'm not the first one to question this, but does this not lead to increasing legal and civil action exposures to the management of the organization? Well, not even a question, it does. Because in a court of law, demonstration that you have the procedures in place, that you have the training in place, and all the I's dotted and the T's crossed, that is going to save you on the day in the court of law. And we are seeing a significant increase in the criminalization of the concept of fail to manage. And this is one of the great disturbing trends in our organizations today, in our societies today, where the manager, because they fail to anticipate, they fail to do anything can be shown to be a criminal act in increasingly more complex legislation, especially in a highly litigious society that we are becoming and have become, like illustrated by Kraft, who's been sued by this lady for I don't know how much money, because their packet did not take 3.5 minutes to cook, and she's suing. Now, this is just indicative of the extent to which the society is looking at what we do in the workplaces. And I suspect that there is going to be a huge recluttering to cover our backsides. And it's almost a futile activity that we're trying to reduce them because we're exposing more. In many ways, we should strengthen the legal protections of our managements. And I'm not too sure that we are actually protecting them sufficiently against the vultures, the legal vultures that are out there who's coming after them. And I'm not meaning this in a negative way. Those kind of legalities are important in any society. But are we contributing to the demise of the manager into a criminal? Number 7, focus on what goes right. Now, this is a statement right out of Eric Holnagel's book. If you focus on what goes right, will reduce what goes wrong. And this is a copy out of that statement, out of that book, Safety 1 and Safety 2. Now, this is the one where I'm struggling. I've been looking at this and working with this for a long, long time. And I firmly believe that the focus on safety is a very negative one, is a destructive one. I've introduced programs myself to change that to a positive focus. I've introduced an incentive system in a mining company where the supervisors would go out and identify the things that people do right, not what they do wrong, and would incentivize them with a quota of smart cards, we call them. But the statement, the concept of focus on what goes right will reduce what goes wrong is rather confusing, and it's a confused statement. If I say to a supervisor, you know, from now on, we're going to go and focus on what's right, you'll get a perplexed look. Now, that's the one aspect of it. My concern is that we are losing the answers to why things go wrong. I love this little video clip of the Marines training, doing a drill. They know why they do it right. They know it's precision, it's timing. They practice it in all kinds of ways endlessly. But if somebody's nose gets cut off, they need to find out why. They will want to know why. Of course they're going to do that. And this is where it becomes a little bit of a confusing dilemma. How do we focus on the things that go wrong and do that in a balanced way? Well, for many years, we've been doing this through simplistic models like, cardinal rules and golden rules and life-saving rules. These days, we call them stickies, or shit that can kill you. I'm a little bit worried about that the latest one, the sticky thing. is it not trivializing the stuff that can kill people in some way or another? But let it be what it is. My concern, as we focus on the things that go right in the organization, I think we are losing focus, emphasis, and laser focus on the things that go wrong. I don't think we can afford that. In a high-risk environment, we have to maintain an incredibly sharp focus on what goes wrong and what can potentially kill people. And this is almost, I believe, what we need, a resurrection of critical risk management in many organizations, and establish that in a proactive way. Number 6, safety is not linear. Also a very common, very famous statement. Safety is complex. You know, we talk about complex adaptive systems, emergent properties, all absolutely, I'm behind that. I have seen the complexity of these processes myself, how one system over another increases the complexity, and we have risk migration. We have so many things that are almost unpredictable. But what are we doing in the process? You will see safety one people everywhere. I think, you know, we're losing clarity. When we look at how safety one operated and the safety two folks like myself, we would look at these tools and techniques and we would almost be scornful of them, which I think is a bit rich. These tools and techniques provided very powerful anchors and tools and methods to the supervisor at the front end, the Swiss cheese model. You know, I have seen so many managers just understanding this model, using it, and even if they use it wrongly, they still use it and they get an access into the concept in some way or another. Now, without these, we are leaving them with a big void, because we are throwing mud at all these tools that exists and existed, and we laugh at the triangles. We are painting ourselves in a corner, because on one hand we say there is no triangle or tool or picture or graphic that's going to show complexity, and then people don't access the models. They don't really have anything to hold on to when they deal with safety. I think we need new models. We need beautiful models. Well, not models like these, but we need beautiful models that can tell us and can give people access. Even if it's half wrong, it's better half wrong than non-existent. The simple, I've seen this the other day, scissors, rock and paper game is actually a really interesting little model of emergent property of safety. You will only know what your particular choice on your selection of the three is once the other person has made their choice. You've seen it emerges. It is something like we have to work our way through and be smart about it and identify new models that people can access and can provide an angle on safety. Safety is not common sense. Safety is a wicked problem. We love to call it a wicked problem, and it is a wicked problem. There is nothing more complex in the business than safety. There's nothing not common sense than safety. But one of my colleagues, a very successful executive manager, said to me one day, the most important task of the manager is to translate complexity to simplicity to the front line. Now, it sounds obvious, but if we fail to do that, we are leaving especially the supervisor as the terrified, the deer in the headlights. And they are becoming the next culprit. Fingers are pointing at them, and they try to point the fingers everywhere else. And we say to them, you know, there is no such thing as a root cause analysis. You know, it's all contributing factors, and it's complex, it's adaptive, and of course it is. But what we're taking away from them is they They used to have a really simple model, the root cause analysis, the 5 whys. I'm not making a case for 5 whys. I'm making a case for a new kind of simplicity, accessibility, or we will lose the supervisor. And if we lose the supervisor in the process of safety, we lose the war. Absolutely no doubt about it. Human error is normal and will happen. Of course it is. There is no question. We have to understand why it made sense to the worker at the time. And I have done this so many times to try and understand what made sense, and it does make a lot of sense when you start to look at it from the worker's perspective. But in unintended consequence is it fragmenting the boundaries of control. Now, I've used my video clip of Daryl many times, and again I'm going to use it. Daryl is a carpet layer. His boss told him in a small company, in our company, the customer is king, and they get a big breakthrough. The richest lady in town calls them in and says, it's Wednesday, I want carpets in my house by Saturday. We're having a huge party. We're in this little town. Everybody's going to be there. My little princess is 12 years old, her birthday party, but you must be finished by 5. Daryl goes out and he does the job. She's coming in, it's 5 o'clock. He has time for a quick cigarette. Well, what should Daryl do now? And we know what he should do. We all say, when I do this live, yeah, we should just tell the lady there's going to be no party tonight. Be honest, be truthful. Yes, of course, that's what he should do. But you know, there is no ways Daryl can do that. The customer is king. What will Daryl do?
This looks great. This must be yours. I have it on the kitchen table. Thanks.
Mommy, have you seen my hamster?
Well, isn't he asleep in his cage?
Have you seen my hamster then?
No. I'm going to go upstairs and look for it. I'm sure. Probably behind the bed like we went the other time.
Okay.
Well, it doesn't stop there. Daryl has a problem. What should he do now? The truth, the right thing to do, again, he should call this little girl in and he would point to this red spot on the carpet and he said, that was your hamster. I stepped on it, it's dead. And she'll be traumatized for the rest of his life, for the rest of her life, and probably him too. The best thing for everybody is that he cuts that piece out, cleans it up, and no one knows. And she continues to believe that her little hamster lives somewhere with a nice family and gets fed every night. This is not the truth, is it? And yet, this is the workable solution here. And when we do not follow through on people, when we are not understanding the circumstances that we put on people, we normalize failure. And this is where the behaviors can become condoned in an organization like you've seen in my example. Now, this is about what we are responsible for. This is what we are accountable for. And there are many times we look at this, people shouldn't be blamed, the next topic, but it contradicts, it conflicts with accountability. Now, we need to install a just culture and maintain a just culture and maintain a no blame policy. Think about Daryl now. And what we start to create is what Timothy Clark calls the nice organization, where everybody hugs, everybody's happy. It is the day that it turns into the kumbaya organization. That's when this organization has become trapped in inertia, cannot make decisions, is choked, make decisions in slow speed because they don't want to offend anybody. It's learned helplessness, he calls it. This is very much part of our society today. This is the no-blame environment. And in this environment, we have created a culture that is inconsequential, where the behaviors of people, even though there is clear ownership here of decision-making to do what the person is doing there. And I've seen and heard he barely makes it out. And I know, and I've heard the other day that the CSRA has done some research. I'm looking forward to that research because this will confirm for me what I've seen so many times. A CEO said to me not so long ago, we have had 3 years in our organization, big organization, and proudly saying, and we have not ever in 3 years punished, disciplined anybody for a safety transgression. Really? And even behaviors like this and Darryl's behavior is going unpunished. And here's the problem. The critical issues in the organization are starting to lose that sharp focus of control. We are eroding the control over the critical issues in the organizations. And here is my fear. As we loosen and relax the culture, the follow-up, the controls in the organization, that the serious injuries and fatal accidents are bound to increase. I think I'm seeing evidence of that, and it's deeply concerning that this is starting to happen. We should ask ourselves very honestly, are we in the safety differently new view approach? Are we contributing to the decay of controls, to the narrowing of the focus on risk, to the fragmentation of culture in the organization, and to the chronically easing of responses? Are we contributing to this, or are we driving against this? Are we creating a laser-focused organization, a high-performance organization, or are we creating kumbaya organizations? Number 2, safety differently doesn't prevent bad things. It ensures good things happen. Very closely related to what happens in the organization. And then I'm starting to wonder, is too much of a good thing maybe not good? This is the start of the flow of good, false, and fake news in the organization, where people don't speak evil, don't hear evil, don't see evil. Because this is a good news organization. This is an organization that's become so hardwired for good news that it starts to feed only good news up in that organization. Just like on Piper Alpha, when the manager in his testimony didn't know why there were so many things going wrong in his organization, said, I knew everything was all right because I have no reports of anything going wrong. We have started to become averse and are becoming averse to the truth.
The truth! You can't handle the truth!
And I know we are talking about this. Yes, this is risk transparency. We are all talking about it. Are we actually in practice not creating that? And are we creating and contributing to risk secrecy? We need systems to generate bad news for us. And we need those systems to chase after that and make it and facilitate it to happen. The final one, not the absence of accidents, it is the presence of capacity. And absolutely. And in the process, unintendedly, we have now gone long ways to devalue, disgrace the concept of zero, the concept of lagging indicators. We have published papers how invalid it is. I know they're invalid because Kinross Gold Mine was an exemplary performer in safety metrics and had a disaster. But how do we know we are making progress? How do we know, especially from the perspective of the shareholders, corporate management, what they want to know? Show us the numbers, show us the good numbers. And we're now scurrying around. We're now looking at all kinds of different metrics, all injury, leading indicators. I'm yet to see a leading indicator that actually works. Predictive indicators. Well, good luck with that. Precursors. The day the ambulance stops in front of the building of the factory and somebody's taken out, either injured or dead, that's when the metal hits the road. Can you imagine any CEO standing up and saying, in terms of the new view, I accept that accident rates don't measure safety. We simply cannot achieve the false goal of 0 accidents. And I accept that employees may be injured or even killed in doing of their work. So what do we have? We are going back to 0. We have no option. We have to define this as part and parcel of what we are here for in the organization. And there is a new excitement brewing in the business, in organizations. The new excitement is about technology, the coming of artificial intelligence, machine learning. Everybody's into that now, even though I don't always believe they are really, but they say they are. And I have mentioned before how I have introduced proximity alert systems in a company. And as I was doing this, noticing that here's the change in behavior of people. As they were working a significant distance away from the multi-roller, before they had proximity alert systems, as we introduced the system, they started operating right at the edge of it. And this is this concept of risk homeostasis. And I know a lot of people in the new view don't like this either, because this is too much about the human mind, again, about focus on the behavior and thinking of the worker. But this is a reality. We are in the protection business. This is essentially what we are. And we are growing that protection now with huge capabilities. Are we in safety too? Are we a little bit with our heads in the sand? Are we really understanding or even thinking proactively about the threats, the kind of decay, the kind of deficiencies, the kind of issues that are emanating from Industry 4.0? When everybody will be connected, everybody will be protected, are we really prepared for that? Or do we need new definitions in safety? It's a little bit like, for me, like the battle, not the battle, but there is the Newtonian physics, the Newtonian kind of safety. And there is the quantum mechanics from Albert Einstein. And there is a huge effort on the go to develop the grand theory of them all. And the grand theory, maybe in safety, this is my attempt, my humble attempt, is E equals mc squared divided by R. Well, this stands for mastery, authority, and purpose. It stands for competence, and it stands for connectedness, and stands for readiness for risk. Especially connectedness. I believe we have to redefine not our systems, not our processes, and how well they function, but how well they are connected, and with what speed do they connect in the organization. A bit of a preview, maybe, of the future. I do think we are at a crossroad, but maybe there are three roads to go from here. We've done long and arduous work in safety through safety management systems approach, through the behavior-based safety approaches, and what is now called Safety 1, culminating in that. And then now we have the Safety 2. And we look back, the Safety 2, look back at all these people, all these processes and ideas that came behind us, and we're very scornful of that. And it really disturbs me how we criticize and throw mud at what has happened in the past and how we are now new. Well, maybe we are going to be scorned too, because I believe in future. The future direction is, one direction is compliance. We can't get away from compliance. The legalities, the legal issues will only increase, and we will have to have a focus on compliance. Given that the technology is arising, the Industry 4.0 is coming, is already here, I believe the future direction is in systems engineering, and where there's a huge focus on technology, on critical risks, and on managing, designing systems that fit in with the operational processes that are so sophisticated in the future. And I believe Safety 1 and safety management systems will disappear into that. On the other road is the human resources function. The human resources function is a little bit on their own, a little bit in a silo, and not really focused on safety. I think the human resource function in the future should really look after the kind of issues like psychological safety, well-being of workers, organizational culture, and we should let those concepts disappear into human resources and let those functions drive these concepts and thinking in organizations. And maybe sometime in the future, they will merge into a more comprehensive, focused business optimization approach. Let's look at the red flags I mentioned. And I mentioned them again. I am absolutely vested in those. I drive those thinking processes in my own work with companies. But the red flags I mentioned, we should be thinking about creating green flags. Give the managers power and dignity. Get rid of the onlookers in the organization. Integrate safety. Maybe we should be looking at reinstating the triangle, the hierarchies in the organization. And the criminality issue, we should look at how do we strengthen the protection of the management and in the organization. Focus on the wrong, right things should be changed on focusing on the right, wrong things. We should reestablish, we should reintroduce in a different way the laser focus on critical risks in the organization. Who moved my Swiss cheese model? I think we should be looking for models as much as we can. We should be creative in this field because we need to be able to translate this to the front line in practical terms, or we will lose their cooperation, their commitment. To err is human. We should be revisiting the accountability of people in safety. And I know we all say that, but what do we really mean with that? The coming Kumbaya organization, maybe we should be looking at a very high performance organization. How do we reestablish that drive in the organization, that critical drive in the organization that delivers results? And second last, we should have systems that generate very, very bad news, that can generate and identify the truth for us and make it palatable. And then finally, we should drive towards the mother of all theories. We should prepare ourselves for an amazing new future. Or we can continue cutting trees down for our statues and create our own demise. That is my story. Thank you very much.
Hey, Corey, what a great presentation. So as mentioned, it is now time for the questions time of the presentation. So if you do have any questions or any comments for Corey, get those into the chat right now. For the interest of time, if we run over the hour, please don't worry. We will pass over all of your questions and your comments to Corey, and he can reach out with his team as needed. So we have a question coming in here that says, Safety 1.5, a good mix of old and new. Is this workable?
Sorry, repeat that.
They say Safety 1.5 is a good mix of new and old. Is this workable?
In some ways it is workable. In other ways it's mutually exclusive. And I think we still have to work through that. And that there's some value in that. We cannot just throw things out. And we tend to do that. And as I mentioned there, for instance, the transition from 1 to 2, 1.5 maybe, how do we create practical models for the operator at the front line to be able to access safety and access these complex concepts that is very much part and parcel of safety.
Absolutely. We have a comment here that said we should always be challenging our current thinking. What got you here won't get you there.
Very much agree. Thank you for that comment.
Another question, they want to know, will you be holding additional sessions in conjunction with this type of webinar? Will you be expanding? Is there more resources? How do we get more from you and from this?
Yes, I am busy with a series of webinars. I'm also developing a training process that will dig deeper into these. It's an online training process. I will dig deeper into these concepts I was only very superficially skidding over this, but of course there is a lot of depth that we need to uncover and dig into to ensure that we can actually make progress on each of these areas to create green flags where we are possibly having dangers looming for us.
Fantastic. So as Corey mentioned, this was just a very brief overview, a skim off the top of a much larger session. So keep an eye out for that. I'm going to take one more question, and then I'm going to, again, we'll send all of your questions and your comments over to Corey, and then we'll wrap it up for today. So this last question, are we throwing mud at the tools of the past, or are we critically reviewing models and theories that maybe are no longer optimal use?
I think we're doing both. Unfortunately, sometimes we are just throwing mud. Okay, let me restate that. We are critically reviewing. I am critically reviewing. I have critically reviewed the Swiss cheese model in many presentations and shown. One of my titles of a presentation was the Swiss cheese model was a very, very bad idea. That is critical review. But there's also a little bit of mud in there. And in the process, it's almost the way we do it that disturbs me. How derogatory we can be about tools and techniques or old view thinking. And you can see it in many blogs. It's almost like people laugh, at the stupidity of the old timers. It's like they're flat earthers. And I've seen this. You see this on LinkedIn all the time. That is what I'm railing against. We shouldn't be doing that. We are all professionals together. We just have different perspectives, and we should critically review. But we should do this responsibly and with dignity.
Fantastic. Well, with that said, Corey, is there anything else you want our audience to take away from today to keep top of mind, to make sure that they're moving forward and transitioning in the best way possible?
Maybe one final statement. I've made the statement. We should, all of us, should critically review whether we are contributing to safety in a constructive way, or are we detracting from it? And in the belief that we are contributing, we may be detracting. Too much of a good thing is not good. Do we challenge ourselves sufficiently to unleash the organization and to create openness and flexibility that people can actually participate in a constructive way and not be driven by what good news do we have to produce today?
Fantastic. Well, Corey, it is always a pleasure to have you. I can't thank you enough for being here today. I know you have a busy schedule, so on behalf of Safeopedia, on behalf of our audience, on behalf of the safety professionals who keep our workplaces safe on a daily basis, I want to thank you, Corey. I want to thank SAFEmap for allowing you to be here. And of course, I want to thank the audience, because without you, none of this would be possible. As always, we will be sending out a link to the recording and the presentation slide decks to everyone in a few days. So thanks again. Take care, stay safe, and remember, keep moving forward with critical thinking. Bye, everyone.